Hey guys, and welcome back to We're Gonna Stab Your Daughter at the Mall. Today we are reading LIARS on the CREEPYPASTA wiki, which I believe is a creepypasta that was moved here for not meeting the pitiful standards of the creepypasta wiki.
Toby is here, but he will not be talking.
Say hello, Toby. Okay, there was once a guy living in our neighbourhood named Jimmy. He got picked on a lot for being confident. Before we even start, is this supposed to be a real creepypasta? Because listen, he got picked on a lot for being a confident and funny guy.
That's the thing that does it.
Yeah.
He's not like he's a smelly weirdo, or he inappropriate, or he's into something that you might not like. He doesn't like how much he goes, oh man, I really like to play the My Little Pony trading card game or some such shit. Like, no. He's really... he's such a great guy to be around, Jimmy. Oh man, I really enjoy being around Jimmy. Let's beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, that's how I remember.
He makes me feel good about myself.
That's how I remember secondary school. Yeah, all the sort of like all the chess club kids would like get around. You know, the one kid who was always cracking funny and impressing the ladies, and just start beating the piss out of him. Just like filling sacks with chess pieces and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and just fucking whacking on him.
Beating him with like a sock full of rooks.
Tossing their dual disc systems at his head.
Those things are utter garbage. Do you ever see like I just remember seeing a kid with one of those little plastic tube, like what parent would actually buy them? Like, it's a massive chunk of plastic that's just gonna hurt someone.
See a lot of weebs at like conventions wearing those, like, and it's like, oh. His mouth tended to get him into a lot of trouble, and he seldom learned his lesson. Unlike Toby's dad, whose mouth gets him out of trouble.
I thought we were gonna stop. Well, I keep trying to encourage you to stop those jokes before he actually cracks and stabs you, and then you'll think.
It's alright, he's just writhing around in a chair we've tied him to at the moment. And Toby's not happy about it either.
Moving on.
He was just very content with who he was and refused to change it. When people asked him why he let them wail on him for his blunt comedy and wisecracks, I mean, who wouldn't beat that kid up? He'd smirk and say, "Honesty is the best policy. At least they're not hiding anything from me, and neither am I from them."
Okay, that's not also, apart from the stupidity of, like, you know.
Also, I don't
not
feel
really
like
what a kid would say, is it?
No, I also don't feel like that should be his voice. That's like what a kid. If this story was written by Christopher Nolan and his brother, that's what a kid would speak like. Hi there, I'm going to explain who I am rather than talking like a human being. Give me an Oscar.
Also,
I don't like that.
That's come along with a really stupid mark.
I don't feel like that's the appropriate voice though, because this guy's being bullied because he's like smart and funny. I feel like he should have a much smoother voice. One of the kids he inadvertently pissed off with a rather crude MILF joke, I love that MILF is in capitals, was something of a psychopath with a sadistic streak who didn't take kindly to the insult. So he rounded up the other guys who didn't like Jimmy.
His name was Ramsay Snow.
And they cornered him after school in the science room. Your mouth got you into this. ...
Now it's going to get you out on your knees.
I want you to remember that. Brett, the ringleader, told him as he looked into Jimmy's terrified eyes. Alright, this just went from 0 to 100. They grabbed some formic acid stored in the lab and threw it in his face. Oh, sorry, let me redo Brett's voice in that case. Your mouth got you into this. They stood around, watched him. Actually, that's not how people speak in London. They stood around and watched him scream in agony as it ate through his flesh
because all of them were actually sociopaths. Before
sniggering around and running out, pretending to be concerned and wanting help for him. When the paramedics arrived and were attending to Jimmy, who was no longer able to scream, the principal asked the boys if they knew what had happened. Their leader, Brett, explained they were walking past when they saw Jimmy drawing a picture of the prophet, skulking around the lab room. By the time they got in there, he was already in that state. The other members joined in and backed Brett up with other fake details as Jimmy tried to protest in silent agony. Toby, give us an impression of what that sounds like. Thanks, Toby. Thank you, sophisticated orange juice.
So, like the new mascots that we haven't done Tough Chris Lampard for a while. So it's Sophisticated Orange Juice, Racist Mole, who's on an episode that will never be heard. I fucking mean never. I think I've got, like, do you still have a copy? Because I know I've got one.
I don't know if I do. Don't ever make the mistake of trying to take pills with really hot tea. That was fucking dumb.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't have, taken them rectally. That was really a weird thing to see you do.
It's like pouring boiling water from a kettle right into my rectum.
There's a cup
Imagine
of tea
explaining that to a doctor.
Well, they said take 2, so of course I thought they're going to go up my butt, because, why wouldn't they go up my butt? You sound a bit too eager, so... No, okay. So, after that I thought, I really want to take this tea quickly. So I thought, what if I can take medicine up my butt quickly? Then I can take a whole cup of tea up my butt. So I poured it in there. It hurt a bit. Then I just shoved the the tea bag up there as well. That is why my anus is burnt inside. Get out of my sight. But you're a doctor. But you disgust me.
The other members joined and backed Brett up with other fake details. The principal nodded and told them he would speak to them after he had a word with Jimmy and got his side of the story after he was out of hospital. A few days passed and Jimmy was kept in ICU with bandages on his face, the doctors salvaging what little they could of his face, his vision still intact in one eye and his jaw withstanding despite the loss of flesh. He was still unable to speak and refused to respond to anyone. He just sat there,
talk to the principal?
Eyes unblinking and staring at the ceiling, bloodshot and filled with animosity. When he was discharged sometime later, he would not respond to anyone with anything other than the word LIARS. His social life gone, unable to smile or even crack a joke anymore. He secluded
But that
himself.
wasn't doing him any good before, was it?
Yeah, in his room.
Because it's he's been such a cheerful, funny person. Of course, he's always at the bottom of the fucking social ladder already.
And began planning. Sick, vindictive thoughts started appearing in his mind. He would get them all one by one. Again, the way that's worded, it sounds like he's talking about the thoughts in his mind. I'll sort them and catalogue these thoughts.
Thought 1. Ow. Thought 2. I'm hungry. Well, and it went on for many hours.
Decimate them, slice them, burn them. He waited patiently until the group would be vulnerable. Late at night, when they said their goodbyes and went home separately, that's when he would strike. That weekend, Brett received a package in the mail. If you know what I mean. Curiously, he opened it to find a VHS tape with the words "For You" etched crudely onto the front.
The thing was, it was set in the 2000s, so he didn't know what it was, nor had anything to play it on.
He put it in and played it. It was footage of my house. Niche joke there. It was a crudely recorded home video by an unknown cameraman who didn't speak at all for the duration of the film. It began with a camera pointing at the date on a newspaper. It was yesterday. As he zoomed out...
I like the way you had to emphasise that. It was yesterday.
As he zoomed out, you could see it was a basement. A single flickering light bulb hanging over and casting an uncomfortable scene. By the time he'd completely zoomed out, it was apparent this was no normal video. In front of the cameraman and on his hands and knees was one of Brett's friends. He was naked, a dirty blindfold around his face.
Okay, so
and a crude
the
gag in
obvious
his
joke
mouth.
is obvious, but Toby, do you want to take this one?
I'll be honest, Matt. I wish I had worn some underpants and not just these baggy pajama bottoms. Because I feel like I'm gonna start getting an erection, and I won't be able to hide it as well as if I was properly dressed.
Also, for anyone who wanted to know what Toby said was, "I'm sorry," because that's what he does a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Toby, no, you're not. Stop saying that. It's basically you going, "I want to interject," and
He was covered in blood, horrific burns, lacerations, and wounds. One particularly large one on his back stood up that almost looked like a word. The cameraman, with gloved hands, took the gag out of the crying boy's mouth, and immediately he begged to go home. This is really unpleasant. Please let me go, man. I did what you wanted. Oh God, Jesse, Mike, Keith. Fucking Keith.
Fucking Keith.
You made me fucking butcher them. I just want to go home, man. Please. I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. He just kept repeating it over and over, rocking back and forth as he did so. Brett's legs began to shake as he felt the bile rise in his stomach. He could see the burned, mangled bodies. In the background, the bodies of his friends. All of them had markings on their bodies in deep, large cuts. The cameraman reached out for the boy's chin and lifted it up, encouraging him to stand. He did so obediently as he was slowly led to a door off screen, whimpering. Brett could see what had been cut into his friend's back now. It was the word liar. The camera cut out temporarily. When it restarted again, they were no longer inside. They were instead out in the cold snow on the outskirts of the woods, and it didn't appear to be the original man holding the camera anymore. It was Brett's friend. He was whimpering and shivering as he held the camera in one place for 30 seconds, pointing at some trees in the distance, hearing footsteps draw nearer. "Where are you, man? You said I could go, man. You said I could go." The boy was screaming and crying, frightened out of his mind, and I just don't think this is very funny.
Not really. You'll see how much this. It's nearly over. It might be a funny punchline.
Alright. It stopped. It turned around to see the mangled face of Jimmy. A horrifying...
Not Jimmy!
A horrifying howl blared through the speakers, and the word LIARS appeared before the tape abruptly stopped. Brett felt faint and darted to lock the door. Knowing what was coming, as he turned to run for it, he immediately hit something and fell backwards. The last thing he ever heard was LIARS as acid ran down his face and began to slowly eat away at his flesh. The last thing he ever saw was Jimmy's face contorting into a sick, twisted smile.
Was that it?
I mean, that's not very good, is it?
Just sort of like a dumb sort of like revenge fact. Like, it's clear. Like, I just imagine the person who wrote this was like, "Oh man, I get picked on at school despite being funny. This feels like they put acid on my face," and this is like their dramatization of their...
It's effectively just like Jimmy the killer, isn't it? It's just like another one of those, kid gets bullied,
and then
gets disfigured, and then takes revenge.
And then it's just super like good at murdering.
And it's just done in such a grisly and unpleasant way as well. Like, I felt quite uncomfortable reading it.
In your trousers. Because they're so tight.
Yeah, this sucked.